Hey guys, Horrorboy465 here, and today we're talking about the third entry in the Crow series, The Crow Salvation. The Crow Salvation came out in 2000, gets a 5.0 on IMDb, directed by Bharat Neary. I totally butchered that name, I am so sorry, but like I said, this came out in 2000, gets a higher rating than the second movie, gets a 5.0. I think the second movie got like a 4.7 or something like that. And at this point in the series, I think that most fans have kind of given up. It's weird because the sequels really don't get a lot of praise, and I can kind of see where people are coming from because really it's not necessary to have sequels to The Crow. But I'll be honest, this movie and The Crow City of Angels are decent flicks. They really are. I just think it's because, like I said, studios they get involved with it and make it more like the first movie. Budget issues, especially with this movie. And I think it's just because they are sequels to a film that didn't need sequels. And unfortunately, that's what kind of drags these movies down for most people. But for me, I actually really enjoyed the series. Like, I love the first movie, love the second film, and I also really do enjoy this one as well. I would still say that the second movie, I think, is a little bit more better, and I'll get into that in a minute, but I do think this is actually a really good film that I really enjoyed. I remember the first time I seen this, I think I watched it on Netflix, and I was kind of, shocked because growing up, I only heard about the first Crow, because I had watched the first Crow from Blockbuster. Yeah, Blockbuster. I went to Blockbuster when it was in business, and that's how I used to watch a bunch of movies. I'd go there and my parents would pick out a couple movies, and I'd go pick out my own movies, and that's kind of how I watched the first Crow, because I had heard about it. My dad talked about it. He's seen it when he was a teenager or whatever, and I had heard about some people saying that it was a good movie. I was catching some rumors about it, and so I picked the first Crow. That's how I seen that movie. And then The Crow 2 I seen on Netflix years later. And after I was done watching The Crow City of Angels, The Crow Salvation popped up. I think I may have caught The Crow Salvation on Sci-Fi once. And I was kind of wondering, I'm like, what movie is this? I think it was before I even knew what The Crow was. Because I do remember seeing The Crow Salvation on Sci-Fi one of the times I was on Sci-Fi. But I never really knew about the series until I watched it on Netflix. I'd watched the first movie from Blockbuster, second movie years later on Netflix, and then after I was done watching City of Angels, Salvation popped up. And I was like, oh, what, they have a part 3? And then I watched Salvation, and then a part 4 popped up. I don't know if it was on Netflix, but I heard about a part 4. I'm like, there's really these many sequels to The Crow? Like, I thought there was going to be like 6 or 7 of them, but there was only 4 movies total. But that's kind of how I found out about the Crow movies. And seeing this movie on Netflix, I actually really enjoyed it. I thought that Eric Mabius did a great job as the Crow in this film. Eric Mabius would go on to be in a lot of TV stuff. He would also go on to be in Resident Evil, the first movie. Did a pretty good job in that movie as well. It's kind of sad that Eric Mabius really didn't get on to do too much more stuff. Like I said, he would just do this one and Resident Evil. Those are the only 2 movies I've ever really seen him in. And I don't really watch a lot of TV because I'm too busy playing games and watching movies. But, I think people have said that he's been in plenty of, I think, crime television shows, which I don't really watch those. Really, the only crime television show I used to watch was CSI Miami and Bones, which I don't even remember if Bones was a crime. I think it might have been. And actually, Bones has Danny Baranas. What's his name? I forgot his name. But I think it's Danny Baranas, if that's how you say his name. I want to see what his name is because he was also on Angel. He was also in a movie, I think, called, I don't know if it wasn't Hell Night, Hellbreed or whatever it was. David Boreanaz. It is David Boreanaz. He's actually in the fourth Crow film. which we'll be getting to that movie later on because, yeah, that's going to be interesting. But The Crow's Salvation, getting back to this movie, is a film that, like I said, came out in 2000, gets a higher rating than the second movie, which means that more people actually enjoyed this movie over the second film. Basically, the storyline is about this guy named, I think his name was Alex Corvus, and he is wrongfully accused of the murder of his girlfriend, and he gets sent to the electric chair. He's on death row, gets sent to the electric chair, and the only thing that he knows is that the guy with the scar on his arm, there's this guy with the scar on his arm that planted evidence in his car, and pretty much got this guy framed. And there was also like a witness that had, given false evidence or whatever. And Alex Corvus is pretty much killed, and he comes back to life and pretty much goes after and looks for the guy at the scar, and also finds these corrupt cops that had actually been responsible for killing his girlfriend. And the movie's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's pretty similar to the first movie in the fact that it's just him going after these guys one by one. The only thing that's really different is that there's more of a search going on for the guy with the scar. So you do have that interesting dynamic, but it is pretty similar. It's just Alex Corvus hunting these guys down one by one and killing them off in pretty awesome ways. And then he pretty much is trying to figure out who has a scar on their arm. And he blows up. There's a point in the movie where he blows up this building, and he sees an arm with a scar on the arm, and he thinks that he completed his mission. So the Crow turns him back into a human. And I like this ending. This movie had a better ending than The Crow 2. I will say that The Crow City of Angels had a trash ending with freaking CGI crows and stuff that did not make sense. Sarah getting killed off. In my opinion, it just like that whole scene was just bad acting. Like for me, Vincent Perez, I'm not really a big fan of the Judah Earl character, and you had Sarah who just did nothing, and the acting also just in that scene kind of seemed bad. But at least with this movie, it has a very good ending. I will say that it has a very, very awesome ending because in this movie you have Fred Ward from Tremors. He's also been in a lot of movies. Big fan of Fred Ward. But you have Fred Ward in this movie, and he is kind of the main guy at this police station. So he's like the head guy. And he's, of course, corrupt as well. And you found that he's the man with the scar on his arm. And pretty much Alex Corvus goes there. And when he does go there, he gets stabbed to death, and they tell him that he's the one who killed his girlfriend and trying to flip it around on him. And then I like the scene where Kirsten Dunst is in the movie, and she's also, I think this was before Spider-Man, so this might have been her first role. And she's okay in the movie. She's not bad, but I think she did better in Spider-Man. And pretty much, I think everything else, I don't really know too much about what she's done after Spider-Man, but I thought she did a little bit better in Spider-Man. Here, it's just like because we'll get into the problem in a second, but there's reasons why I don't think that she does great or that Eric maybe is sometimes a little off. But we'll get to the reason why in a second. But Kirsten Dunst is there. She's the sister to the girlfriend, and she tosses this necklace down, which Alex Corvus had left her to connect them so that they can keep themselves connected to each other. So that she can pretty much know what he's doing. And a really good ending where he sees it and he realizes that Fred Ward's the bad guy, and the Crow brings him back and gives him the powers, and he goes after Fred Ward and puts him in an electric chair and fries him. So that ending is way better than The Crow City of Angels. I'll say that right now. It feels like a much more satisfying ending, an ending that makes more sense. And I'm a really big fan of that ending. But to get more into this film, now we got past the plot, let's get into the good and bad things. First of all, the good things. Like I said, I think Eric Mabius is awesome in this movie as the Crow. I think he's a really serious and, you definitely don't want to mess around with him in this movie. He definitely brung a very intense performance as the Crow in this film. So Eric Mabius is great. There's a few lines that I have a problem with. A couple of times where his delivery is a little bit weird, but we'll get to that when we get to the problems. But Eric Mabius is awesome. I like the idea of, and Kirsten Dunst is okay. She's all right. She's not great, but she's okay in the movie. I like the idea of the electric chair and this guy being falsely accused and a corrupt system, a corrupt police system they got with like dirty cops and false framing and stuff like that. I like the idea that, Eric Mabius' Crow doesn't really have makeup on, it's more like scars. And I like how the makeup is done in the movie. It's not really makeup, it's just scars, but I like the design because Eric Mabius wakes up and he has this dead skin on his face, burned dead skin. And he peels it away, and there's the Crow makeup underneath of it. And I keep saying makeup, but it's scars. I'm going to say makeup anyways. But it's the Crow stuff under the skin. So I really like that scene. It's very original. And I also like a lot of the action scenes. I think Eric Mabius does a great job in the fight scenes. He's capable. There's a lot of gun action scenes in this movie, lots of explosions. They have the classic Crow car chase scene, which is actually pretty well done. It has like Rob Zombie's Living Dead Girl, like a remix of that playing. And speaking of, music, the soundtrack is actually really good in this movie. There's a lot of really awesome songs that I really enjoyed. A lot of songs that definitely fit the film. And the soundtrack is great. Like I can say, these first three movies have great soundtracks. And this one, it's kind of weird because I rewatched this movie a couple days ago on Hulu. And on Netflix, it's during the scene when Alex is climbing a fence and he's escaping the prison. There's a song that's playing. It's like a heavy guitar song that's really awesome and rousing. And on Hulu, try to test this out. You guys can see what I'm talking about. But watch that scene on Netflix and then go to Hulu and watch it. There's different music that's playing in it. Kind of reminds me of Nightmare on Elm Street 3, where if you watch that scene that has Into the Fire, there's another song that's playing on the VHS version that I own. It has a different song on it. So it's pretty interesting because there's two different songs on the same scene. But yeah, that's not a problem. Just figure it was something weird that happened with Hulu and Netflix. Maybe they couldn't get the rights to that song or something. I don't know. But there's a lot of just really great scenes as well. Really great ideas that I like. I like the death scenes. There's a scene where these two girls are getting harassed by this cop, and Alex is there, and he's like, "I want you to bend over, officer." And he's like, "How'd you get here? Get out of here!" And then he's like, "Show me your hands." He's like, "These hands." And then he gets shot, and there's this girl sleeping in this car, and she wouldn't wake up. But when he gets shot, she wakes up and like freaks out. He's like, "You're up." So it was a pretty funny scene. I think that Eric Mabius brought some really great comedy to the film as well, dark comedy. I like the scene where he goes to this guy's place who kind of falsely accused, not really falsely accused, but he was like a false witness, pretty much. And he goes there and he's like, he says this line, I cannot say it, but he brings up like the primordial. He's like, primordial ooze, the benevolent creator. It's a really great line. I can't say it though. It's just a big tongue twister for me. But that's a great line of dialogue. I like how there's this scene where he stabbed this guy's leg, and he's driving this car, and he crashes his car, and that's pretty much how he kills him. And he drops this cigarette lighter, and it blows his car up. Granted, bad CGI, but a pretty awesome idea. And you got Danzig playing, Belly of the Beast. Freaking awesome. So I think also you have we'll get into the problems. I want to get into the problem in a second, but yeah, good things is a soundtrack, action scenes, practical action scenes, very practical in this movie. Decent lines from Alex Corvus in this film. The revenge stuff I actually really enjoyed. Has a great ending, a great um, kind of a good bad guy. I wouldn't say he's great, but he's a decent bad guy, Fred Ward, which we'll get into that in a minute. But I keep saying we're going to get to that in a minute because I want to talk about all the bad stuff in a second. But what else can I say? I mean, it's a fast-paced movie. Is it as good as the first movie? No. Is it as good as the second movie? In my opinion, no. Um, and I think that it is a great movie, though. But we're going to begin to the problems real quick because this movie does have a lot of problems. I think the big problem with this movie and the reason why I don't like it as much as the second film is because the second film, I think, feels more like a film, and it has that awesome yellow look that I actually really enjoy, that worn down yellow rotting look that I thought really added a great atmosphere to the city with the mist and the broken glass and the mayhem everywhere. The City of Angels was a great location. In this movie, you don't know much about the location. The atmosphere is pretty basic. It looks generic. And it's a very, very low budget film, which I think cinematography was one of those budget cuts they had to do this movie because it was being made fast. So the one thing they had to cut in the budget was cinematography. So you have this really, I think, in my opinion, awful look. It just looks generic. Like, you go from the first movie, which has that kind of black and white gothic look, which looks amazing. Second movie, very unique. The yellow, rotting, worn down look, which I really love. And then this movie, they mix in a little bit of green in it, and it's like, it looks generic, and the atmosphere just looks really just generic and fake. And very low budget, so it looks low budget. It doesn't really look like a TV. It doesn't really look like a film. It looks like a TV movie. And there's a lot of bad CGI in it that I really don't care for. I'm not really a big fan of the whole subplot they got going on with Kirsten Dunst's dad and him being involved with the crime, and then Fred Ward, his whole storyline I didn't care about. And maybe about how he knew about the crow. I'm just like, how did you know about the freaking crow? How did you know this? They don't explain it. So that kind of stuff I didn't care for. The bad guys, people talk about the bad guys in Part 2 being bad. Granted, these guys aren't as bad as Part 4's characters, but at least Part 2's, I can remember their names. Like Spider Monkey, Curb, it's Judah Earl, Curb, Nemo, Spider Monkey, Kali. I can remember all their names. I can remember the characters like that. In this movie, I don't even know Fred Ward's character's name. I just know it's Fred Ward. The rest of these guys, I know one of the guys would go on to be in a couple of Quentin Tarantino films, as well as Predators. I think he was in that movie. I'm not really sure. They're just corrupt cops, and they're not much their characters. So you have really weak bad guys in this movie. I think even weaker than Part 2's bad guys. So you have weak bad guys. What else? I think it's just and the main big problem with this movie that really gets to me, because I was thinking about if there's anything else besides this, but I think the big thing that was wrong with this movie is the script. And it's because you have dialogue in this movie that is totally out of place, or you have dialogue that just sounds awful. You have kind of like the subplot issues and really just bad dialogue. I think that's just what it is. Like, most of the dialogue in the movie and most of the characters are bad. Really, the only characters I care about is Fred Ward, Kirsten Dunst, and Eric Mabius. And Fred Ward was a terrible character. Not a bad actor. I think he did a great job acting-wise, but I think he was a bad character. Kirsten Dunst, I think she was a weak character as well, and also her acting wasn't great. So really the only one that I thought was a good character and had, decent acting was Eric Mabius' character, Alex Corvus. And people have brought this up, and I have to agree. The love story is awful in this movie. It is awful. You have flashbacks done in like a awful MTV look. I just can't describe it other than that. A really cheap TV, MTV type look, and you have Alex Corbus and his girlfriend doing karate and doing karate poses and going, "Wah!" I'm like, no, 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 no. First of all, it looks awful, sounds awful, is awful. The love story is terrible in this movie. You didn't buy it at all. Heck, I think it's about as bad as the love story in The Crooked Prayer. I would say it's that bad in this movie. The love story is terrible. Um, and it does have issues, but however, I will say this: we're not going to end the review off on a bad feel, on a bad note. Because I will say this movie is actually really awesome for being a direct-to-video type movie, for being a third movie in a Crow series. I think it is a pretty well-made movie. It's a pretty enjoyable watch. I really enjoy it. Is it as good as the first movie? No. Will any of these movies be as good as the first movie? No. But judging them by what they are, and they are films, they're honestly pretty fun. And this one's honestly pretty fun. I mean, you had a pretty good Crow in this movie. Eric Mabius does a good job playing the Crow. Has an interesting look with the gray and black jumpsuit with the cross on it, getting the coat. Good look for the Crow. The scars, just a very unique looking Crow in this film. And good action, good dialogue from the Crow in this film, and it's a good watch. It's a pretty good movie. Just struggles with some things, but it's a good movie. But anyways, guys, this one has issues, but it's nothing nearly as bad as the next one. And that's because the next movie that we're talking about is The Crooked Prayer. You guys can guarantee that'll be a rant. Oh my goodness. Oh, get me prepared for that movie. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching the review. Hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you guys on the next review. The Explorer of Horror is out. See you guys.